Okay, sorry for being late. As I was trying to log into Zoom, I couldn't log in, and then I discovered I had lost the internet connection. So I switched internet providers, and now I'm okay. Are there any questions before we begin? All right, this is microbiology, so let's begin. I'm going to ask a favor of you. If you don't ever see that recording going on, once I go to my share screen, it's awfully hard for me to determine whether I'm recording or not. If ever I'm not recording, if you could just politely ask me, are you recording the lecture? And to see it, like I said, I've got to be not sharing my screen. Another thing about Zoom is that it has a whole lot of features that are difficult for one person to use. So if I am talking to you, meaning lecturing, I cannot see the text messages or the emoticons and other things like that. And I'm just going to warn you that, in fact, they taught us when we were taking the Zoom class that if you wanted to use all the features of Zoom, you need two teachers to teach the class. One person to handle the messages and the emoticons and other things, and then one person to do the talking and the lecturing. Well, you're only going to have one instructor, so I'm going to tell you up front that I am not even going to try to follow the text messages. If you want to send me a text message, I'm going to suggest that you email me, because when I share my screen like I'm doing now, I can't see the text messages. Okay, now I'm not sharing the screen, and if anyone were to do chat or anything else, I could see it. But when I'm sharing my screen, it's not available to me. So I don't use the text messages, I don't use the emoticons. I probably should use the thumbs up and the thumbs down, but I don't use those either. If you want to send me a message over Zoom, you're going to have to unmute yourself. I've got everyone muted once you log in. So if you want to ask a question, click up here, ask to unmute, which actually you can do it yourself, and then ask your question. If you don't want to talk publicly over Zoom, then email me. Like I said, I will not even see the text messages until I stop sharing my screen. Okay? So I'm just being upfront to you. I'm not using the text messages, so please don't use them because I can't answer them. All right, so let's look at the syllabus, and let me warn you, in the summer we have a truncated schedule. We're going to be covering the same material in 8 weeks instead of 10 weeks. And there is only one break I'm giving you. I normally have one lesson on chapter 7, and I decided in the summer that I'm not going to give that lesson on chapter 7, that we're going to end it with chapter 14. And you'll note that even with that, the schedule is chapter 14 will be covered on Tuesday, and then the final will be covered on Thursday. There's not a whole lot of time to study chapter 14, but that's the way the summer schedule is, and that's the way it's going to be. Okay? Any questions about that? Another problem with the summer schedule, and I'm assuming it's whoever made the summer schedule, they left the lecture time the same, even though we're only meeting for 8 weeks instead of 10 weeks. So we'll go 8 weeks, and 10 weeks. And so that's cutting into the lecture time. And then they extended the lab time for the summer, which didn't make a whole lot of sense to me because the lab is largely online and I don't really need more lab time. I need more lecture time. So I'm going to tell you that the first 15 minutes or 30 minutes of the lab, I'm going to be finishing the lecture. Okay? Any questions about that? So the lecture will be from 5 to 6:20, and then at 6:30, if I haven't finished the lesson in the lecture, we're going to talk about the lecture for 15 or 30 minutes. And then when we're done with the lecture, we will start the lab. Okay? And I thought about just changing the lecture time, putting on 15 more minutes, meaning making it to, I don't know, 6:35, and then starting the lab at 6:45. And I decided not to do that because in the catalog, it has these times. And what can I say? I didn't do this, and it doesn't make any sense to me. You should have the same hours in the lecture for each term, including the summer. And for some reason, when they did the summer schedule, the lecture, it's going to be, well, it's like 2 weeks short, because this is the same amount of time we use in the 10-week classes, and we only have 8 weeks here. Does everyone understand that? So I'm trying to explain to you why in this lab time we're going to be having a little bit of time in the lecture. And I will do it whenever we don't finish the lecture schedule. And then we'll do a little bit there. If ever I finish the lecture schedule at 6:20, then we will not have the lecture at 6:30. And another thing, when it is 6:10, please tell me if I don't notice it, because I can't really go at 6:20 and then start at 6:30. Zoom needs a little bit of time to process the Zoom recording, and if I start the lab while the lecture is still working, it sometimes, not all the time, fouls up the lecture, and then there won't be a lecture recording. And I'm just going to word it like that. It is a little bit more complicated, and I can contact the Zoom company and work on getting it fixed, but it's not anything easy to do, and I would rather stop the lecture a little early or start the lab a little late, and then we don't run into that problem, because 10 minutes is not enough time for Zoom to finish the lecture lesson. And I need at least 15 minutes. I probably need 20 minutes. Okay? Any question about any of that? All right. So my contact information is right here. However, I would prefer, instead of sending your comments to my email address there, let me see if I can show it. See, like I said, I had trouble getting the server here. Where is this? There we go. So I would prefer that you use the mail in the Canvas website. I will be checking this mail at least 5 times a week. Okay? The other mail, I get a whole bunch of, well, mail I'm not interested in, and it has no application to me. So I'll only check that mail maybe about twice a week. So if you want frequent you want a fast turnaround in a response, please don't email me here because I will answer you, but it won't be more than twice a week. Okay? Office hours are by arrangement online, or you can set it up on email, or we can do it after the lab, meaning that after everybody else logs off, we can just talk student to professor and professor to student. Okay? All right, if you need to know about the textbook information, you have 3 options for required textbook, and the 3 options are here. Generally, most students go to the bookstore and buy the 3rd custom edition of Tutora, but this is hard to find. You can find it occasionally online, and if you get it used, it's much cheaper. But you can get the 12th edition of the textbook online, either new or used, and we are using the 12th edition of the textbook. I think they've recently come out with the 13th edition. We're not using that. You can use an older edition of the text, but if you do, you are responsible for figuring out which pages to read. Sometimes I just tell you read chapter 2, which is pretty easy to figure out what to read. But like on chapter 10, I'm telling you to only read pages 264 to 272. And you'll have to figure out what that would be in an older textbook. Okay? Any question about any of that? There are some optional texts which you can purchase for the class. I heard from the bookstore that they are running out or ran out of the photographic atlas for microbiology. This is not a big concern to me because it's optional. You could probably get this book online if you look for it, and if you get it used or online, it'll probably be cheaper. But I'm just warning you that the textbook is either running out of this book or they are out of it. They mentioned that a whole bunch of students were buying the photographic atlas, which is good. You don't need it right away. You will need it when we start the lab experiments, or you won't. It's not, I shouldn't say, it's not required for the lab experiments, but it will help you for the lab experiments. And that is, it shows pictures of what you're looking at. Now, I do have some pictures on my website, and you can get other pictures on the web. You just do a search on the internet, you can find it. But if you do want the book, it is useful, but it is not required, it's optional. And the bookstore is either running out of it or is out of it. Okay? The other good resource, of course, is the Canvas website. There's a whole bunch of information on Canvas, including I've got a link for the first 3 chapters of the textbook, and then the summaries of each chapter in the, I think it's the optional textbook. Not the optional textbook, the, what do we call it? The custom-made textbook for Clark College. The library has, of course, reserves, and they do have the photographic atlas at the library. Of course, reserves. I don't know how that works online, but the library has some system for allowing you to access the photographic atlas. And by the way, the library is open this term. I think the Clark College is open this term. There are not a whole lot of classes, but there definitely are some classes. And you can go to campus. Always check, like if you're going to the library, check for what their hours will be, because they may be different in the summer, as well as the fact that we're still under COVID-19 restrictions. anyways, my lecture notes, the worksheets, the lab modules, the lab project handouts, you can find the objectives, are all posted on the Canvas website. So become familiar with it. Course description and the student outcomes, I'm going to let you read through that. Policies and suggestions. If you're sick, contact me and I'll try and help you keep on track. This will be an online class. We are meeting live over Zoom, but if you're not able to make the class live, you can watch the video, and I'll discuss a little bit about that. You can find it on YouTube. But contact me prior to a due date to make arrangements for late work. You should prepare for class. That is your responsibility, like looking over what we're going to cover in the lecture and the lab. You also should read the lab module before you work on it, before we do it. That's not quite as important in an online class, because if you simply read it before the lab and then do the lab online, that's fine. But if you go over it, it'll help your understanding of the material, and then you can work on it while I am sitting here waiting for questions. And by the way, I'm the only instructor at Clark College, at least for microbiology, who does that. I will be there in the lab, online over Zoom, to answer any questions. So if you have questions going through the lab module, ask them, and I'll tell you when I will be there during the lab, meaning obviously I'll shut down the lab at a certain time, and usually it's around, let me take a look at the schedule, usually I shut it down around 8:20. All right, attendance and participation are always good, but it will not be a percentage of your grade. I say may, but it's not going to be. I'm not usually going to take attendance, and I'm not going to record who's asking questions in the lecture. But the reason for being in the lecture is if something's unclear to you, you can ask a question, and then you can get clarification right away. Now, if you are watching the video, you'll have to email me, and then you'll have to wait until I respond before you'll get clarification. And you won't be able to ask another question once, at least immediately, when you read my email. So it's always best to ask questions in a live class. The quizzes will be online. They do have a due date. And when you take a quiz, you only have 24 hours to start the quiz. And then the quiz, once you start it, it's timed. And then after that day, you can't start the quiz. So when you take a quiz, it has to be done within 24 hours. Like quiz number 1 has to be done Wednesday of July 20th to the 24th. So this is probably Tuesday. So probably it's 21st if I have my days right. And you have to take it from 11:59 p.m. on Tuesday to 11:59 p.m. on Wednesday. And once you start it, it is a timed quiz. So the purpose of it being timed is you might be able to look up 1 or 2 answers in your textbook or the notes. But if you continue to look up other answers, you'll run out of time. So you need to know the material for the quiz before you take the quiz. Any question about that? The reason for the quiz.
I have a question. Question. So I saw you're using the Lockdown browser.
Yes.
I have an iPad. Is that going to work on that?
Let me get back to you I don't remember if it's the iPad or the Chromebook, but I've got the option selected for one of those to work, and so I don't know that specific answer. So let me get to you. You emailed me on that. Okay?
I did. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
All right. And obviously that will work assuming you have a modern either iPad or Chromebook. If you have an older one, it may not work, but one of those should work. The reason for the lab, the quizzes, sorry, not the lab, the quiz being within 24 hours is that to reduce the cheating. So if you take the quiz, please don't tell other students what questions are on the quiz. And I have another way besides the time that you have to take it in 24 hours and it's a timed exam, and that is you won't have most of the questions that the other students do, meaning when you take the quiz, it will randomize the question. So like for question number 1, it will vary what that question is, okay? So if you say it's about this, then the student takes question number 1, it won't be about this. Does that make sense? So it does randomize the questions. And that's also to reduce cheating. Since I'm talking about cheating, let me go a little bit further. Student conduct. You should not cheat in a class. If you cheat, particularly plagiarism, where you use another's work, and that is not citing them, and it's more than 3 words, that is plagiarism and considering cheated. If I find an instance where you are using somebody else's words and you don't give them credit, you will get a 0 on that assignment. Okay? So I encourage you guys to work together, but don't simply use your study buddy's answer. You have to put it in your own words. Is that clear? If ever I find an assignment where the answers are the same, you will get a 0, as well as the person who I guess gave you the answers will also get a 0. Because that's plagiarism, and plagiarism is really a serious matter. Not only at the college, which really frowns on it, but also in life. And how serious is plagiarism? There was once a sitting United States senator, and a newspaper discovered that when he was a graduate student, when he wrote his, I don't know if his master's or PhD thesis, he plagiarized somebody else. And he had to resign his position as a senator for plagiarizing somebody else. He took, I don't know, a whole paragraph or maybe several paragraphs from somebody else and didn't put it in quotes and say who it came from. Now, if you want to use somebody else's exact words, you have to put it in quotes and say where you got it from. Okay? Any question about that? There is one exception where you're allowed to plagiarize, and that is if I ask you to define a term, you can look up the term in your textbook and give me the textbook's answer. Okay? That's the one time where you can plagiarize, because you do not have to write the definition of a term in your own words. You may use the textbook's definition. But that's a very specific example, and that's why you can plagiarize. And I could make it where you can use the textbook's answer, but you should put it in quotes and say you got it from the textbook. And you may do that. I've had some students do that. But if I give you a term and you give me the definition of the term directly from the textbook, that is okay. All right? That's the one time where you can plagiarize. All right, where was I? Talked about illness, preparation for class, attendance, students' responsibilities. Well, you should pre-read the material, bring them to class or on to Zoom as appropriate. You should know the dates of assignments. All the due dates are mentioned in Canvas, and Canvas has a calendar which should tell you the due dates. And actually, I'm really lousy at using the due dates here, but over here it's telling me that these are the due dates and I should finish these assignments, which I've actually already done. This is in July. Oh wait, no it isn't. So we're having our first lab on Lab 0 and Lab 01, and so that'll be due July 10th, and nobody's turned it in, so I can't grade it. Anyways, this is the part of the calendar, and I think there, you can click there and get the entire calendar, and it'll tell you when things are due. So you should have plenty of reminders telling you when things are due. If you miss class, it's your responsibility to find out what you missed, and you should be able to watch it on my YouTube website. You should keep papers until the final grade is given, so if there's a question about your grade, you have proof that what I have in my grade book isn't the correct answer. All right, all interactions between students and instructor, and instructor to student should be cordial, businesslike, and professional. And that includes communications in emails and over Zoom. If you're offensive, non-cooperative, I can boot you from Zoom. Okay? It's sort of like booting you from the class. All right. I have some responsibilities which I've given here. Please read through them, and I will note that if there's a big assignment, okay, like a multi-page document that I have to grade, it may take me longer than a week to get that graded. Because I don't have one to grade, I've got 20 to grade. And it'll take me, for the long assignments, it'll take me 10 to 15 minutes for each paper to grade it. And multiply that to 20, you can see why that's going to take me a while. Hopefully nobody will withdraw yet. If this is necessary, you follow the withdrawal procedures at Clark website. We're an 8-week class, so I think, and you'll have to look me up because I don't remember on the summer term, but I think you have to withdraw during week 6 if you want to withdraw. Okay? To drop the class, you must drop it in the first week. And if you're thinking about withdrawing or dropping, try to make up your mind on Friday or Saturday, whatever date is the end date, and drop the class by that date, and then you'll get a complete refund for this class. After the first week, which is either Friday or Saturday of this week, you cannot drop the class, and you'll have to pay for it. The only thing you can do is withdraw. If you do not withdraw, I do not withdraw any students. And if you do not withdraw, then you'll get the grade you earned, which will probably be an F. Okay? And let me mention a little bit about late assignments. I do accept late assignments. In Canvas, when an assignment is late, you cannot submit it to Canvas. You can, however, email it to me, but if it's 1 day late, you're going to get a 25% penalty. If it's more than 1 day late, you can turn it in for 50% penalty. But if I go through the assignment and put up the answers, I will not accept it late. Generally, in the online class, I do not put up the entire assignment. So generally, I will accept an emailed late assignment. I also do not accept late assignments during finals week. I've got to do a lot during finals week, so get your late assignments in the week before assignments. I already talked about student cheating and plagiarizing, so read through that. Suggested study material, like most science classes, microbiology will be challenging because it's going to introduce you to a lot of new vocabulary, many new concepts, and you're going to have a lot of assignments that will be due essentially at the same time. You may feel stressed. This is normal, and many students do this. To alleviate some of that stress, please ask questions early so that I can help you. Don't let it fester, because if it festers, the problem just gets worse, and then it's harder to correct the situation. Please understand that we are going to be spending, about 7 weeks per class, is that right? 7 hours, not 7 weeks, 7 hours per week. So there's about an hour and a half, and there is 2 hours, so what is that? 3.5, yeah, so about 7 hours per week in class over Zoom. And then you are expected to be spending about 7 weeks per class working on your own, getting the assignments done, doing the reading, going over the notes. Where was I? So that means plan on spending about 14 hours of outside class plus the 7 hours of in-time class each week in the class. If external responsibilities do not allow you to spend that much time on one class, you should consider dropping this class and taking it during another quarter when you have more time. Now, this is the average time that students spend outside of the class. Some students spend a little less than that, others spend more. If you cannot spend about 10 hours of class outside of class, then really you should consider taking this course when you have more time to spend on the course. Any question about that? All right, here's a list of suggestions that may help you study. Please read through that. I don't want to go through it. It varies, obviously, on what your own personal habits are. Grading. You're going to have a plagiarism quiz, which is due this week, and it'll be worth 20 points. So you're going to be learning about plagiarism. If you fail to get all the 20 points on this plagiarism quiz, then you will earn 0 points on the infectious disease research project. This project is worth 100 points. So you need to take the plagiarism tutorial and the plagiarism quiz and pass that quiz with 100%. You may take the plagiarism quiz multiple times, at least 5 times, okay? So if you don't get 100% the first time, just take it again, and you'll see the answers that you missed. Realize when you take the plagiarism quiz that the questions or the answers will shuffle around. So if you took question number 5 and you took number A and then you take number B, you might think it's different, but like I said, the answers will shift around. So you have to read it, okay? Any question about that? I'll show you the schedule in a little bit. There's going to be 5 quizzes. They're 75 points each. The lowest quiz you may drop. So the total points for quizzes will be 300 points, or 4 times 75. Many of the questions will be multiple choice and fill in the blank. The multiple choice questions you have to take on Respondus Lockdown Browser. The fill in the blank, or where you have a short answer, which will be a short essay, it'll never be a long essay, but you do not have to have Respondus Lockdown Browser, and those questions will not be timed. You can take 24 hours to work on the short answer questions. Okay? But you must get it done at 11:59 p.m. on the day of the quiz. And by the way, you must submit your quiz at 11:59 p.m. because if you do not, it'll time out. And all questions not answered will be 0. There will be a worksheet for both the lecture and the labs. There will be about one for each lab for a total of 50 points. Each worksheet is due during the week of the lab. The worksheets are due on Saturday. Generally, the assignments are due on Saturday, 11:59 p.m. The quizzes are on Wednesday, and I set it up that way because students wanted the quiz on a day where they weren't having the lesson, so that way they could have all the time they wanted when they took the exam, because we don't have class on Wednesday. And then the worksheet I did on the last day of the week for the week that we do that. Meaning for chapter 1, there will be a lecture worksheet, and it'll be due this Saturday. The lecture worksheets will be worth about 2 points each. There will be about 1 for each lecture, or a total of 25 points. Okay? You'll have an unknown bacteria, and this will be a project where you're going to be trying to identify the unknown bacteria, and that project will be 75 points. This will be done all online, by the way. And then I mentioned a little bit about the infectious disease project. You're going to choose a disease and send me the name of the disease and what you're going to do it on. And once I okay it, you can do it. And I'm requiring that you get permission from me because nobody can have the same infectious disease as somebody else. So the first person who sends in an infectious disease research project will get it. The second person may not if the first person has chosen that infectious disease. Pick an infectious disease. If it's not an infectious disease, I'll tell you no. If somebody has already picked that topic, you can't pick it. And I'll give you more information about the infectious disease research project when we get closer to doing it, meaning it's not assigned now, but when I assign it, I'll give you an information package, which is already on Canvas. Okay? There will be a final cumulative exam, and it'll be worth 150 points. I'll talk more about that when we get closer to it. By the way, if you miss the final, there is no makeup, so try and take the final by the due date. If you can't take it by the due date, contact me and I will try and make it so that you can take it earlier. But it has to be done by 11:59 p.m. Tuesday because I've got to start, doing the grading and then finalizing the grade and then eventually turning in the grade. All right, so the breakdown of points is shown in this table. Let me blow this up. Plagiarism quiz, 20 points. There are going to be 5 quizzes, but you drop your lowest at 75 points for a total of 300 points. There will be lab assignments, about 10 of them, 5 points each for 50 points. The identification of the unknown will be a project worth 75 points. The infectious Disease Project will be 100 points. There will be a number of worksheets. I'm sorry, I haven't counted how many there are, but it's generally one for each lecture, each chapter, and they'll be worth about 2 points each for a total of 25 points. And you'll notice that if I have, 12 of them at 2 points each, it won't come to 25 points. So I'll have to do a correction and multiply by a constant to make this worth 25 points. And then there will be a final. It'll be worth 150 points, and that makes a total of 720 points. Your grade will be the number of points you get out of 720. Okay? There will be some extra credit assignments, and they will be worth about 20 points. You can look on Canvas for them. There are 2 that are right away. Let me see if I can go to it. Oh, I got it already open. Sorry. Come on. Probably lecture 1. There you go. One of them is send me a picture of your face. It'll be something I'll never show to anyone else. What I'll do is I'll take your picture and put it in my grade book. So I'll shrink it down in size to, gosh, less than 1 inch. What would that, maybe a half an inch? So about that size, if you can see my fingers, and about that size. So maybe a half an inch by half an inch. And I'll put your smiling face next to my grade book. It's really a good way for me to learn my students' names. So I'll see your smiling face every time I post the grades to my grade book. So you can get extra credit points for that, and if you submit it, it's, I think, 3 points. Let me bring it open, and I can do it. Yeah, for 3 points. And just submit it to this folder in Canvas. Click on this link and you can submit it. The other one is the extra credit study sheet, and this one is due July 10th, meaning this Saturday. I'll open this up and you'll have a link to the extra credit study sheet. Click on that link, and on the first tab of the link, I don't think I have that on my website. The first tab, you should put your schedule, like when you're working, when you're sleeping, when you're eating, everything like that. On the next tab, you have your study schedule for microbiology. Put when you'll be studying for week 1 on tab 1. And for week 2, if it differs when you're going to be studying, put it on tab 2. And tab 0 is where you have just your general schedule. Okay? And I will look through that. Obviously, this is sort of to help you figure out when you're going to be studying and how many hours you're going to be studying. And the only thing I'll do is if I see that somebody's not studying very much, I will tell them, you know, you're not studying very much for microbiology. You probably should be spending more time on the class or taking it during a term when you can spend more time on the class. Anyways, those are 2 extra credit assignments, and they're at the start. The first one, you have to turn it in by July 10th. The second one by July 17th. So that'll be, you have to turn it in by week 2, Saturday of week 2. All right, any question about any of that? I think I will just point out that here's a link to take the plagiarism tutorial, and then once you've taken the tutorial, there's a link for taking the quiz. You have to get 100% on that quiz or take it again. And there's a link to help you about the citation style, APA citation style, which is covered in the plagiarism tutorial. All right, any question about any of that?
Yes,
Yeah.
Dr. Volp, I have a question about the lab schedule for Zoom sessions. If I read it right, we only can miss three live Zoom sessions for labs.
Can you say that again? I didn't understand.
For the live Zoom sessions for lab, you only can miss 3 of those. Is that right? For the quarter?
Oh, that's in a normal term where you're going into the lab. If you miss the Zoom session, you can watch it on my YouTube site as a video. So that's not missing it. Okay?
Okay, thank you. And then my last question was for lectures, live Zoom. Are we supposed to attend every single lecture?
No, like I said, if you can't attend because of your schedule, you can watch it over the video on my YouTube website. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
The only advantage for attending is you can ask questions like you just did, and then I can respond. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So the grading scale, out of 720 points, if you get greater than 92%, you get an A. If it's greater than 90%, then you get an A minus. A B plus is 88% or higher, etc. Okay? The only thing we don't give a D minus or a D plus, you simply get a D. And for some reason, we don't give a C minus too. This is a little bit different than the Clark College grading schedule, but this is the grading schedule that either microbiology uses or maybe biology uses. And I noticed that Canvas doesn't use this grading schedule, that there were some people who got a 92.5%, and Canvas is saying they're getting an A minus. And anything over a 92 is an A. Okay? So this is the grading schedule. Canvas doesn't quite do it correctly, at least for our class. All right, I'll let you read about question review and written corrections. I really haven't had that since about the first 2 terms of teaching. Microscope use in the lab and virtual labs. We will have lab, but it'll be over Zoom, and so it'll be online and sort of virtual. And you won't really be using microscopes, but we do have a virtual lab where you will work on the computer to learn how to use a microscope. Okay? Some of our virtual labs use Flash, and Flash is no longer supported by any browser. It's not actually the browser's fault, it's whoever made Flash, I forget, and Adobe. And they will not let Flash run, and so any of the virtual labs using Flash, we pulled them from the lab. Okay, we do have a few virtual labs that do run, and you are expected to run them. And one of them will be using the microscope. All right, support services for students. If you don't know about this, you should contact them or use them. The one that is most used by students is the tutoring service. They do have tutors for most biology classes. You've got to look and see if they have a tutor available this term for microbiology. It always varies whether they have a tutor for microbiology or not. Sometimes they do, most of the time they do, but sometimes they don't. Come on. All right, I'll let you read about the non-discrimination policy and the school emergency procedures and the safety information for students and physicians. Obviously, we're going to be doing this online, so you won't have any direct contact with the bacteria. So in a sense, this is not terribly pertinent to you guys. But it is useful information, and it tells you the organisms we work with and their BSL stands for biosafety level. So BSL 1, these organisms are not considered a health hazard, and so we can use these and there's no problem. However, even if you were to consume a large number of E. coli, that would make you sick. Okay, and you have E. coli in your gut, but if you were to take large numbers of these and consume them, they would make you sick, and that's why it's the lowest risk. It's not zero risk. And then the medium risk organisms. The high risk organisms we don't use in microbiology. Some words of advice and comfort. Sometimes it seems like instructors are your enemies because we have to maintain standards. We will not always be able to accommodate you. But you should know that we are teachers to help you succeed. In fact, that's the only reason why we have teachers, because you guys could learn all of this information on your own. The only reason why there are teachers is because it's much easier learning from a teacher than it is to learn on your own. If you have problems, complaints, concerns, come and discuss them with me. The earlier the better. Don't let them fester, which makes them worse. And I will do my best to try and work something out with you. Like if you're sick, and if you let me know in advance, I will postpone the assignment due date for you. But if you tell me afterwards, I may not postpone the assignment due date. You should know the lab safety rules. I'll go through this in the lab, when we talk about the lab. All right, at the end of the syllabus, we have the tentative schedule. If it changes, I can change it, and I'll let you know, and I'll publish the syllabus online if it changes, but this is the schedule. I haven't changed the schedule for a long time, but occasionally I had to, like, I think it was a winter and we didn't meet during a whole week, so I had to change the schedule. That's probably the last time I changed the schedule, but occasionally we do. So for today, we're going to cover Chapter 1, going over technology session, the syllabus, which I've already done, the tips for success, which I've already done, vocabulary we talked about, and then Chapter 1, the microbial world in you. And as we're doing Chapter 1, we'll talk about Chapter 10, the classification of microorganisms. But that is only pages 264 to 272 from Chapter 10. On the left side, I've got the schedule for the lecture. The first practice quiz will be due next week, so week 2, Wednesday. And you should really take the practice quiz because taking it will help you figure out what my questions are like, as well as get you a little bit familiar with the Respondus Lockdown browser. To take the multiple choice questions on the practice quiz, you have to take it with the Respondus Lockdown browser. And the other reason for taking it is download it, the Respondus Lockdown browser, and get it running, make sure it's running, because if you download it right before taking quiz 1 and then it doesn't work, which every term, or about every other term I should say, there's usually 1 or 2 students who have trouble with Respondus Lockdown browser. And if you have trouble, you're going to have to contact the computer help desk and help them figure out what is going wrong with Respondus Lockdown Browser on your computer. They are experts at getting it up and running on your computer. Usually, something is wrong in the settings on your computer, and Respondus Lockdown Browser has to change the setting in order for the Lockdown Browser to work. I've never had a student who never got the Lockdown Browser to eventually work on their computer. But this will take you time to get it running if you're one of the few who it doesn't automatically run on your system. And at another institution, actually this summer, I had a student and all she was doing is it wasn't working, so she would delete it and then re-download it. It didn't work again, and she did this like about 5 times. That was a waste of your time. Especially if you download it twice and it's not running, you need to call the computer help desk and they will help you getting it running. Like I said, I've never had a student who never got it running on their system. Now, to run Respondus Lockdown Browser, it's best running from a computer or a laptop, although it can run in either a Chromebook or an iPad. I'll look and see which one and answer that student. Working on the phone, Respondus Lockdown Browser will not work. It is possible to attend the lecture over the phone. In fact, you can dial in and listen as well as speak over the phone. And if you have a phone that shows the video, it can show you the video on the phone. But the Lockdown Browser will not work on a phone. All right, any questions about our schedule? I have on the schedule in yellow or blue the due dates for the important assignments. I do not have on the schedule when the worksheets are due for the lecture and lab. Generally, the worksheet is due on the Saturday of the week that lesson, either the lecture or lab, is held. There is one exception, and that is Chapter 14. There is a worksheet to this one, and it isn't due on Saturday because you're taking the final on Thursday, and I hope to have the grades pretty close to being finished by Saturday. So this one, I think it's due on Wednesday, but I have to look exactly when that worksheet is done. All the other worksheets are due Saturday of the week that you do that. So Chapter 13 will be due on the 21st, the worksheet to Chapter 13. Any question about any of that? All right, that's it for the syllabus. Let's move on to the lesson. That's not it. Where the heck do I have that? I had that open before. I must have accidentally shut it down. Let me get rid of this. That's not what I want. All right, let's open it again. Chapter 1 and Chapter 10. Oh, by the way, let me go to the website. You will have for Chapter 1 always a study guide, which at the top of the study guide shows you the objectives for this lesson. Okay, the objectives for Chapter 1, and then after the objectives there will be the notes page, which will have the detailed notes and sentence structure of the material we'll be covering. Any questions about that? This will not be in a slideshow-like format. I will upload the PDF file of the slideshow once we finish the lesson. I encourage you to take your own notes. You can print the objectives and the notes out, and then write your notes off to the side of where we're talking. The reason for taking your own notes is students learn best from their own notes. So if I were to publish my notes and you were to print it out, you would learn only 50% of the material than if you were to study from your own notes. And then note-taking also helps you remember the material, meaning if you're just listening to the lecture, you'll only remember about 10% of the material, which isn't very much. And if you take notes on the material as well as listen, because your brain is listening and then translating it over to writing the notes, you will actually learn 20% of the material. So try and take the notes because it doubles your learning capability. And 20% isn't very high, but like I said, it's much better. And how you get it up to 90% or 100% is you go over the notes time and time again, and then you read the textbook. Okay? How many times do you have to go over the material to learn the material? And I'm talking about long-term memory. Anybody have an idea? How many times you have to be exposed to something before you learn it? Nobody's guessing, so I'll tell you, they've studied this with middle school students. I don't know why they use that age group, but to learn the material and actually learn it for long-term memory, you have to go over the material on average about 20 times. Now you can reduce that if you really want to know the material, but still to learn it at 95% or greater, you still have to go over the material at least 10 times. Simply listening to it only gives you the material one time. If you take notes, you're getting the material 2 times. So at the minimum, you have to go over your notes 8 more times before you'll learn it at 95% or higher. Any question about that? All right. Let's move on. So I usually have an early slide, usually the first slide, giving you the major goals that we're going to cover for this lesson, and it's also a rough outline. So know the terms. These are not all of the objectives, but these are the major goals for this lesson. So know what a microbe is, a microorganism, a germ, a pathogenic organism, a parasitic organism. Know what is the microbiota, what's an infectious disease, an emerging infectious disease. Know what pasteurization is, and know what Koch's postulates are. You should also know a brief history of microbiology and understand the importance of microbes. Any question about that? Okay, let's talk about the importance of microbes. This is showing you the nitrogen cycle, where nitrogen moves around in the Earth's ecosystem. Starting with nitrogen in the air, it can be fixed by bacteria and archaea into an organic compound, and most of that will be broken down when the bacteria and the archaea die and decompose by bacteria and fungi and archaea and released as ammonia in the soil. Plants can use ammonia, but they do not like it. Okay? And the ammonia can be converted by bacteria in the soil to nitrite, and the nitrite can be converted by other bacteria in the soil to nitrate, And green plants love nitrate. If you look at the plant fertilizer, it probably has nitrate as one of the main ingredients. And then green plants can use the various sources of nitrogen, and they can convert it into an organic compound, and then that will decay when the green plant decays. Okay? And then the nitrate can be converted by other bacteria and archaea in the soil, or in the water, I guess, into nitrogen. So that nitrogen moves around in the Earth ecosystem to all of these locations. Okay? And how important are microbes in the nitrogen cycle? Wherever we have a red arrow is showing you that this step in the nitrogen cycle is because of a microorganism. And you'll notice that almost all of the steps of the nitrogen cycle happen because of a microbe. Like this one does not, but all other steps do. The decomposition of the plant into ammonia happens by a microbe. Any question about how important the microbes are into the nitrogen cycle? If we didn't have the microbes, nitrogen would no longer accumulate, would no longer recycle in the Earth's ecosystem, and it would all stay or would accumulate in one or two areas. Okay? Microbes are also important in the making of soil. Some microbes can actually obtain nutrients from rock and literally break down the rocks, leading to the formation of soil. Now, most soil is made by wind and water and erosion, but the microbes are a significant factor, make a significant amount of soil. Okay? So the microbes are important in soil. The last one, and then I'll break here, is that when we look at the oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere, we'll see it changed over time. Initially there was no oxygen in the atmosphere, and then it started rising, and then went to about 5%, and then the oxygen level increased around here, and then came up to about 21%, which is the present day oxygen levels. When we look at what first started oxygen on the planet Earth, what put the oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere was from microorganisms, bacteria, engaging in photosynthesis and creating oxygen, releasing it into the, eventually into the atmosphere. It could have been released initially into the water and then moved into the air. And that happened about 2.7 to 1.8 billion years ago. And that brought the oxygen level up to a high enough level that we have the evolution of plants occurring, and now plants also make oxygen. But if we look at the amount of oxygen that's made from green plants, it's only about 50% today. And the other 50% of the oxygen that's made in the Earth's atmosphere is made from microorganisms. The point being that microbes are important in how much oxygen and whether or not there is any oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere. Any question about any of that? All right, if there's no questions, I'm going to end it here, and I'll see you at 6:30 for the lab. All right? All right. Bye.